Welcome to the 128th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's Podium. For over a century, this platform has been a gathering place for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to discuss the most pressing issues of our time.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to those who are joining us online. My name is Tanya Van Biesen, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and your host for today. Imagine the transformative power when the compassionate heart of philanthropy meets the dynamic engine of venture capital. We're about to learn about this very idea through a new Canadian collaboration. By bringing together the deep-rooted trust of the Terry Fox Foundation with the bold, values-driven investment strategies of Lumira Ventures, we're creating new critical pathways designed to fuel Terry Fox's dream of a world without cancer. Our ability to offer you these timely discussions is due to the support of our partners and sponsors, and today we're very pleased to partner with Lumira Ventures to bring you today's event. Thank you very much. We are also grateful that Canadian Bankers Association is our season sponsor and that Air Canada is our official airline sponsor. And thank you also to Canada's Forest Trust Corporation, our smart forest planting partner, supporting our goal of reducing the club's carbon footprint. Today, we also warmly welcome students from Ontario Tech University's Health Sciences program. Thank you very much for joining us. Before the panelist introductions, let me share some club information with you, and I invite you to visit our website at canadianclub.org for all of our membership and event information. I would also encourage you to share information about today's event on your favorite social media platforms. We love it when you spread the news. And I do hope that you will have questions today for our speakers. So for those in the room, there are traditional Q&A cards on the table with pens, so please feel free to fill those out, and someone will be around to pick those up. And for our online participants, please hit the red Q&A button on the right side of your screen. Do it early so we can get it in. Then I will introduce Michael. So I'd like to call Michael Rossi up, Chair of the Terry Fox Foundation, who is going to deliver opening remarks and to introduce the panel. Michael, Canada's podium is yours.
Thanks very much, Tanya. And thank you to the Canadian Club for hosting us here for an incredible conversation that we're going to have here today. It's my pleasure to share a few opening remarks. 45 years ago this Saturday, April 12th, 1980, a Canadian hero did something incredibly bold. Terry Fox dipped his prosthetic leg in the Atlantic Ocean, and he created a ripple that's been felt around the world ever since. Terry had a vision of a world without cancer, a world where people wouldn't have to suffer. He dreamt of running across this country to raise funds for cancer research. And I'm not sure that even Terry knew just how far that dream would go. After 143 days in a row of running, the equivalent of a marathon every day. Let that sink in. After 143 days, Terry's marathon of hope ended, but his vision did not. Terry challenged us all. If he couldn't continue, it had to carry on without him, and it has. At the Terry Fox Foundation, we are inspired by Terry's resilience, his courage, and his determination. We're fighting a disease that is relentless and evolving. And that requires us to be even more relentless and evolving in our response. In Terry's name, we raise and invest millions of dollars every year in cancer research, groundbreaking cancer research, adjudicated through the world-class Terry Fox Research Institute. And we are making incredible strides. In Terry's name, we've created the Marathon of Hope Cancer Centers Network. That's a network bringing together 40 hospitals, institutions, and foundations across this country, along with the first ever patient advisory group on research. And they're collaborating to deliver precision cancer care for the first time ever to all Canadians. And today, we thank you for joining us for an incredibly inspiring and important conversation about a new vision. A vision to harness the power of cross-sector collaboration, to attract new investments, to accelerate progress, and to deliver impact to investors, donors, and most importantly, to cancer patients. With our new partner, Lumira Ventures, we'll be launching Canada's first Cancer Breakthrough Fund. Lumira shares our passion for patient impact and innovation, and they also share the belief that when we all work together in our areas of expertise, we can accomplish incredible things. Terry believed that he should, and we should, try the impossible to show that it can be done. We agree. Terry implored us to finish it, and by it, he didn't mean his run. He meant his quest to create a world without cancer. Today, you'll hear more about our next big step towards that vision. It's the type of bold innovation that Terry epitomized. The time is right, perfectly right, for courageous Canadian-led innovation. So let's hear how we can all make that happen. It's my pleasure now to introduce our moderator, Avis Favaro, as well as our panel, leaders who are driving this initiative forward. Peter van der Velden, Suman Rao, and Michael Mazza. So Avis, over to you, and I'd invite our panel to come up and join us.
All right, good afternoon. Just checking, you can all hear me? Yes? Thumbs up. Wonderful. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I have to say that when I got an email from Peter to say that he was doing this, the synergy just went, boom, this makes perfect sense. Because as I look around the audience here, I'm going to do a poll, not an election poll, but I will bet that the majority of this room has had someone in their life, a sibling, a parent, a brother, a spouse, who's been affected by diagnosis of cancer. Can I just see hands up? Okay, that's the majority. And I just want to tell you, in the last 2 years, my brother is just recovering from advanced colon cancer surgery. My dear friend and colleague at CTV discovered that at the age of 52, he had not one, but 2 primary cancers, different ones at the same time. And after a very difficult year, he is back on the air reporting on the stock market, of all things. And my husband, an incidental finding, looking for kidney stones, and what do they find? A rare neuroendocrine tumor. So he had a part of his intestine removed. But they are all doing fine because of science. Because someone in a lab somewhere was thinking, how do we do this? So John, my colleague at CTV, is on the air taking a pill form of chemo. And he is on TV on a grueling schedule, I will tell you, he's doing that. So the question is, in my career of reporting, I saw lots of ideas for cancer, and I saw lots of great researchers working on things, but how do you get it to move along quicker? How do you take an idea from a petri dish into a company? And so what you're going to hear about today is, what do you know, what don't you know, and how do you put it together? So let us start. By the way, don't forget there are questions. You can write them down, or if you're online, you can press the button if you have additional questions. But let's get underway, and we'll start with you, Suman. So you started your career as a cancer researcher, and then you've switched now to working on a company that brings those ideas to commercialization. How did you make that switch?
So I want to start by saying that, like most people in this room, I've also had family and friends who've been touched by cancer, and unfortunately, the disease won in every single case. So we do need to keep doing what we're doing and keep fighting the good fight.
They all died? Everyone?
Yes, yes, unfortunately. But my passion for cancer truly began, it dates back to my undergrad days. I've always been fascinated and intrigued by this disease. And I remember sitting in my biochemistry class with my professor drawing something on the blackboard. And this was basically an intricate network of mechanisms that control the very existence of who we are and what we do, how we live and breathe. And then she said that if one of these things gets dysregulated and goes wrong, the same things that are responsible for normal human physiology can turn cancerous. This absolutely blew my mind, and I decided that I will not go to med school and I will pursue a career in research. So what followed were the next 9 years of me pursuing a career in cancer research through my PhD at McGill, and then I went on to do a postdoc at Harvard. And coming out of that, it was fantastic because I learned two things. One is that cancer is a very, very complex disease. It's not a single disease. It's not a simple disease. It really is an umbrella term for multiple types and subtypes of diseases. The second thing that I learned was that just as human beings evolve, cancer evolves. So we're constantly in this race against the disease to try and outsmart it. While I did my research, I still had a very translational lens because I didn't want to get caught up in the weeds. So today, I realize that while research is a foundational piece of all the great innovation that we've had, it is one part of the puzzle. There are so many more steps that need to happen between research at the bench to bringing drugs to patients. So, while we have government agencies and philanthropic organizations like the Terry Fox funding and supporting cancer research, which is absolutely crucial, we also need to have cross-sector collaboration. We need to have multiple groups coming together to be able to take this through this long, complicated path, often ridden with lots of failures. And these groups, include folks like mission-driven company builders and entrepreneurs, seed stage investors and accelerators, a lot of whom are in this room, venture capitalists like ourselves who bring depth of capital, knowledge, expertise to build and scale these companies, growth equity partners who can continue to support these companies as they go through clinical trials because those are extremely expensive to run, and ultimately strategic partners as well as pharma folks who can take on these drugs either as licensing or acquiring the company, which not only creates a very clear path to commercializing these drugs and bringing them to patients, but also drives liquidity for investors like ourselves. So this is the process. It sounds complicated, but it happens. We have drug approvals happening all the time. And for me, I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to be able to think across all of these different aspects. So when I look at a company, I'm able to say, well, is the science or technology going to address the underlying root cause of the disease? Can it translate into the clinic? And can it be fundable? Because we need capital access to move these forward.
All right, so what I hear is from the bench side, you saw the commercial side, And now the other side of the equation is yours. So you are very successful. The Terry Fox Foundation is hugely successful. And you've raised almost $1 billion. So I think you've got the right formula for doing this. What was the roadblock, or what is it that drew you to a partnership?
Thanks, Avis. Building a little bit on what Suman said, and one just by introduction, for me, I started realizing that I also didn't want to be a doctor or a nurse, and the reason was because what they do is kind of disgusting in reality. But I cared about healthcare deeply, right? And so I figured out that everybody in healthcare needs money to do the things they do, and so I pursued the career in the way in which I did it. And the reality is I came through, cancer's ugly. I was 12 years old when Terry Fox ran, and it was the first time I ever even watched the news, but I would get up every day just to see where Terry was, and Terry realized that cancer was ugly, and he realized that research was the solution, but he also knew that we were underfunding it in Canada, and so when he set out, he wanted to inspire people to get this message and get behind them. And so Terry Fox is this unifier, and to this day, he continues to do that. And I want to talk a little bit about what Michael Rossi said. There's opportunities in the next decade because of advances in science. So advances in genomic science, advances in AI, advances in machine learning. And all of that is dependent on data. And one of the issues we have, just because of the way our systems are funded, we have provincial boundaries, is no institution in Canada had access to enough data to drive the research to the next levels of innovation, the next levels of discovery. And so with the help of Health Canada, we brought together the new Marathon of Hope Cancer Center Network. And Michael said it's over 40 institutions. And so it's everybody that you think it should be, from the Princess Margarets to the BC Cancers, to the McGills, to the Dells, to the Memorials. And they are all now working together in collaboration to advance precision medicine by sharing data. That's important because what that will do is it is going to drive new innovations, and that's going to create all these ideas. But if those ideas sit in the lab, patients don't benefit. And so for us, everything is about collaboration, not just in the public sector, but also public-private. And so commercialization of ideas is absolutely critical to improving patient outcomes. And for us, that's a key driver.
And have you been able to, at the Terry Fox Foundation, commercialize? Was that a doorway that you can't go through?
We don't have a clue how to commercialize. And so again, that's why cross-sector collaboration is important. So Lumira, they're great at it. And so bringing together a partnership, know what you know what you don't know, is important to creating those next innovations.
So you have the studies, the scientists, you have the 40 years of run-up to where we are here, but you need help making it commercialized to bring it to the patients.
Absolutely.
So how did this partnership come to be born? Peter, I'm going to throw that at you. A
Sure.
chance meeting, or was it strategic?
So both. Look, we are obviously in the business of building transformative companies that can deliver products to patients. And that's about a lot more than money. And people sometimes in this ecosystem, all they talk about is one thing. How do I get capital? How do I get capital? How do I get capital? But it's actually not about that. It's actually about smart capital. And it's about collaborative environments. And it's about using all the stakeholders in the ecosystem to manage risk, to reduce that risk, and then drive innovation forward. And so we started back in 2021 thinking about, if we look at our portfolio, where are the two parts of our portfolio where we really think we could collaborate with a foundation entity to really make a transformative difference? And if you look at our portfolio, we have strong franchises in a number of areas, but the two that are the most significant are in cardiovascular disease and in cancer. And so as we were narrowing down that kind of silo of where do we want to collaborate, what's the right collaboration relationship, I got a call from Michael. And Michael said, we have this vision for something that we want to do that's different. And we've been talking to a number of our stakeholders in the ecosystem that we collaborate with, and it turns out some of them are LPs in your funds, and they've said, we should talk. And so Michael spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes kind of giving me the high level of his vision, and it immediately resonated. It was immediately what we wanted to do. Cancer is 40% of the VC ecosystem. It's 40% of where capital gets allocated. There are still huge unmet needs in this category. And we believe in smart collaboration. We think that that's actually the key to success. And we couldn't imagine a smarter partner to collaborate with. Here's an institution that's been funding fundamental research for 45 years. They are connected to almost all of the academic leaders and clinician leaders in this country who share our collective vision for ending cancer. And so we talked about how we could do that, and it was just, every part of it made sense. We spent a year having to think about what was the right model. It had never been done here before in Canada. There were some proxy models in the US. We wanted to make sure that we got it right, and that it was accretive to both of us, and more importantly, that it was accretive to patients. And I think we got there in the end.
So now, in your work and your, how you have your recipe, do you have examples of cancer studies, researchers that you've seen at the bench side that you were able to expedite and get them to market? You got some good, success stories?
Every single company we have is that story, but I'll pick one. I'll pick Zymeworks, which is a Vancouver-based company that many of you would know. We met Ali Trani when he was still a PhD student back in 2009. And he had a vision as a PhD student to do something that hadn't been done. He was going to go from the lab bench to building a transformative cancer company. And we did not invest in Ali back in 2009. We spent 6 years talking to him about his business model, what he wanted to do, what his vision was for the business. We ultimately invested in the business in 2016. He took the business public in 2019. We generated a fantastic return for our shareholders. And 3 weeks ago, Suman, when did they get approval?
About a month ago.
About a month ago, they got just approval for their first cancer drug for breast cancer. That's from lab bench to patient in as clear a way as I can tell the story.
And I will add that, that drug is actually quite transformative because this was a drug that got approved actually for biliary tract cancers, one that has 10% survival rates, when you look at the 5-year survival rates for patients. And it was incredible because this drug actually doubled the overall survival for these patients, so more than doubled. And this is meaningful, right? Because these are patients that are dying within 3 to 6 months of being diagnosed. And here you have a new modality, treatment modality, that is able to extend the life of these patients, which is absolutely incredible.
And now you know why Suman works for me.
And how does that make you feel? I mean, it's a business.
Gratifying. It's absolutely amazing to see. I always think of it as the journey of a drug. Even though it reached a patient today, it started 20 years ago at a lab bench when a poor grad student was burning the midnight oil. But that's what it takes, and it's amazing to see that transformation come through, and we are super proud. If you walk into our office, you'll see lots of posters of drug approvals, and in fact, in the last 6 quarters, we've had 5 FDA product approvals. And I don't think a lot of VCs, let alone in Canada or in the US, can say that.
Avis, I'd like to build on that a little bit. I mean, I think when you're looking at cross-sector collaboration and partnerships and things like that, it's incredibly important to really focus on the values alignment. And for us, as we started to get to know each other, the way you listen to Suman talk and the fact that she's a scientist that happens to be in a VC company, the way Peter talks about patient impact, like those were the things that resonated for us because, again, our goal is that world without cancer. It's about patient impact. And again, finding a partner that believes in those same things is critical to creating a good partnership.
So when they say stories like that, they tell you examples of that, how do you feel? Is this how does it hit you?
Every story about patient outcomes being improved is a good day.
Faster.
Better treatment modalities, new therapeutics, new biotech, new med tech, all of those things. It's not easy to come up with an idea that's going to improve outcomes. Cancer, and Suman's already touched on this, it is incredibly complicated. It's over 200 diseases. There's no simple answers. And even as we're evolving in our thinking, this old idea that breast cancer is breast cancer and prostate cancer is prostate cancer, it doesn't exist anymore. The reality is you have to get down to the molecular level of the cancer and then analyze what is that cancer like. And that's why the database that we're building in the Marathon of Hope is critically important, because we can take those cancers and we'll be able to compare them across the data system and absolutely make the right treatment recommendation for that patient based on their unique cancer.
Devil's advocate question. Okay. Some people say a charity is a charity, and that touching in venture capital might make some people uncomfortable. Or is this a time for a change that we need to do something different?
I think it really comes down to aligning around purpose, and we share a common purpose, and we have different areas of expertise, and ours happens to be in the nonprofit charity sector. It's about working with donors, it's about creating passion, inspiring, and then aligning donors' interest with outcomes and impact. We felt Lumira shared that. When Peter and I first started talking, and this idea about not enough ideas, particularly in Canada, where we have so many smart people and we have so many innovators and there's a bunch of good ideas, but there's no capital available for them. And so they end up going south of the border and they have to compete in that market. And the issue with that is, even if they're successful south of the border, the value capture is south of the border. And so we're not building that culture here in Canada. And as you build the culture, then more and more of those thinkers, right, are going to come up with ideas, access capital, and we should see improved outcomes. So all of those things, whether you're the charity, whether you're private sector, government is a big partner in what we do. So are all those other charities that we're working with. And so for us, this is where Terry the Uniter brings us all together and says, what's our goal? It's to overcome cancer. We all share that.
As I was preparing for this, I noticed the phrase venture philanthropy, which I had not really heard of, although there are examples in the United States. But this is the first venture philanthropy program of a large scale in Canada. Would that be one of the first?
It is the first partnership between a charity and a private sector venture company. But many of our partners have accelerator programs in their institutions, their hospitals, their universities, and they have, those are great programs. And so that would be a venture philanthropy model that is happening, but often those programs don't have enough capital to transition to full commercialization. And so continuity of capital is something that we can be able to accomplish with our partners. So again, those accelerator programs are an important part of who we are, and we hope to bring ideas out of them.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just pick up on that, though? Because I think it's a really important point. And there's someone in the room who gave us this direct feedback, and so I won't mention their name, but I will reference the direct feedback, which is the challenge with the term venture philanthropy is it can be an excuse for giving money away and losing it. We're not trying to do that, right? We are trying to take capital which has purpose. It is donated or invested with us, but with purpose, and that purpose is both to drive transformative products for patients, but also to return real returns on that capital, whether it's for the stakeholders who are invested in the fund, or whether it's for the foundation, who we hope, as a function of the donations that will come into the foundation, will allow them to be the biggest collaborator, biggest GP or LP into the fund, and then it's a virtuous ecosystem where we're returning capital to them that they can redeploy then to fundamental research or to the next fund. So again, I don't want you to confuse this term venture philanthropy with false charity. The goal here is to do things that are transformative, both in terms of returning capital profitably and creating transformative products.
Okay. We're getting questions from the audience. I guess sort of following on that, how do you want people to feel when they're involved in this venture?
We could probably all answer that. I'll say we want everybody that's involved with us to feel that they're part of creating solutions.
Suman?
What I will say is, despite all of the great drugs that have been approved and everything that we have out there, we still have a long way to go. And I think this fund is a great channel and a great vehicle for you to feel like you're making a true impact and making a difference, because we are bringing together the best and the brightest minds in a collaborative way to be able to fund and invest in the best companies out there that are able to address some of the biggest challenges that plagues this disease. Mm-hmm. So I think now's the time to do this.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. We are at a pivotal time in terms of Canada. So, Peter, how might this bring more capital, more expertise into Canada? Because we are, University Health Network the other day posted that it's going to try to bring up American researchers, bring money in for this. How do you think this might have an impact in Canada?
Yes, let me context that first, because I think it's important. RBC did an interesting piece of research about 6 months ago, and they looked at the last decade of venture-backed innovation across the entire spectrum. And what was interesting when you dug into that data is that 9 of the 10 most transformative companies that have returned the most value back to limited partners and investors were life sciences companies. That's despite the fact that this is a chronically underfunded space. It only accounts for between 15 and 16% of all venture capital. And in the US, it's exactly the same story. Last year in the US, if you look at all the M&A activity across the entire spectrum of venture, life sciences companies accounted for 5% of the companies that were sold or transacted on, and they accounted for 44% of the capital that was returned to limited partners. So the opportunity in Canada exists. This actually is a competitive advantage that we have that we are not exploiting. And I think Michael alluded to this earlier. What happens in this country is we do the heavy lifting, we do the innovation work, we do the seed work to build those companies to the next level, and then we look south of the border to have all the capital come from somebody else. And so when these companies actually get to the point where they deliver products to patients and when they deliver significant value for shareholders, about 90% of that value accrues to foreign investors. That is a fundamental problem. And we can change that. And we should change that, right? If you look at who funded those companies that invested in those Canadian companies and those Canadian innovations, there were 96 US pension plans in those companies. There were 5 Canadian pension plans in that mix. There's an opportunity for us to have more domestic capital to get deployed to build the great companies that are coming out of the research being done in this country, for us to own more of that value and to have more of that value accrue to Canadians, both in terms of jobs, manufacturing, and patient benefit. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. And it's a small part of the equation, but we think it's an important part of the equation.
And one thing that I will add to that is with this fund, we're super proud to be carving out about a quarter of the fund to go towards co-investing alongside incubators and accelerators that support early stage innovation coming out of Canada. And the Cancer Breakthrough Fund will act as a partner along with those seed stage investors to support these companies early on. And to Peter's point and to Michael's point about value capture, I think this allows us to sort of tap into this incredible pipeline of deals that we see as very, very strong ecosystem players that come to us, and we're going to be able to fund them. We're going to be able to get into these deals early on, play a supportive role as the companies continue to grow. But what's also great is the depth of capital, the continuity of capital, which we can support through our core funds, as well as the vast network of co-investors that we can bring into deals. And we've repeatedly done that over so many deals in the past, I would say, a year or two. And we continue to build that network.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we probably have about 5 minutes left, but how quickly can you scale up? Like, do you have companies that you're looking at or research projects that you're ready to move into the pipeline quickly?
I think there's 2 parts to the question. I'll answer the first one, which is when do we expect to launch the Cancer Breakthrough Fund and then move into investing in companies? Probably 12 months. And so, we are looking at the end of the year. We're looking in the first quarter of 2026. It's important to know that, one of the unique components of the fund is that you can be a donor, an investor, and a donor. And what I mean by that is philanthropists that love the concept can donate to the foundation. We will aggregate those donations into our limited partnership in the fund. But investors can invest with Lumira directly. And from our perspective, it's increasing the amount of capital on purpose. And so if you look at using other people's money, that's a great way for us to work. And so the timing is that. Peter, the second part of the question is, are there companies?
Yeah, so I'll answer. So we look at about 1,000 companies a year. About 40% of those are oncology or cancer companies. So the pipeline and demand for this kind of capital is almost unending. The challenge is really the filtering process, trying to figure out what is the best, what can be the most transformative, and that's obviously the process that our team goes through. And then the other part to that is really, if you look at what's happening in Canada, there hasn't been a new life sciences fund formed since 2 years ago. Again, so the dearth of capital in this market is incredible. And so the opportunity to start executing is tomorrow, right? I mean, we have to go through the process of fundraising, but the opportunity set is simply piling up at the door, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah, we do have a very, very active and exciting pipeline of deals that are ready to be taken a deeper look at. And we can go tomorrow. We can, in fact, go right after this.
Yeah, we've literally closed 4 new Canadian investments in the last 6 months. 2 of those are cancer companies. One is a company in Halifax called Soundblade, transformative technology for surgical decision of cancer tumors. Another is a company called Alpha 9 Oncology out of Vancouver, a radiopharma company that my colleague Luhan just invested in. And so the pipeline is deep. But you need capital, you need expertise, you need collaboration, you need focus, and you need a will to win. Canada sometimes doesn't have that. Sometimes we look south of the border. Sometimes we rely on others. I think now is the time for us to have the will to win and to put together the resources to do that.
And with that, sorry, one last point. I do this
and
all
she
the
does
time.
this all the time.
All the time. No, but with the company in Nova Scotia, I think what's great to point out is we brought an investor from America into this company because of the long-standing relationship that we have to be the only other co-investor alongside us in this company. And this is, one of your secondary geographies, if you will, and we are a lead player in these markets because we get to parse out the gems that other people don't look at. And when we came into this investment, we brought along the provincial government to put money into this. So this, I think, is the type of companies we want to build, and this is Canadian, this is homegrown.
So just a question. Prior to this partnership, how many of those thousands that come to you are you actually able to fund and move forward?
Less than 1%.
And if there is a substantial influx of capital to do this, what would that increase to? Double, triple?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer.
You can just say more.
More. There's the answer. More. I like it.
You can just say more, right?
I'll just go back to Suman's answer. Makes me smile, but when she says we can do it tomorrow, she means it, and that makes me happy.
100%.
Yes, he's got lots of energy, right? But he doesn't
Absolutely.
play golf enough, I hear from his wife. Okay. A couple of more questions. I guess, does the situation in the United States with the changes and the drop in funding at the universities and there play any role in how you plan this out?
Look, I think, receiving research grants from the NIH, receiving research grants from other institutions is very, very fundamental because this is what helps advance science, which ultimately feeds into the drug pipeline. But I think now is the time for alternative sources of capital to step in. The Terry Fox Foundation continues to support cancer research, and then through this fund, we will be able to sort of try and fill some of those gaps because ultimately you can have a lot of research projects that are going to be funded, but they need to be taken past that and through the translational process to get them to be medicines.
But do you think this initiative will actually support retention of Canadian staff here? Is that possible?
100%. I mean, look, the problem today, and we're already seeing it with all the chaos, is Americans are putting term sheets to companies in Canada, and one of their asks is that they move south of the border as a part of, accepting the term sheet. That phenomena is going to continue. The chaos in the U.S. is going to continue. The only way we can respond to that is having a homemade solution. We cannot be reliant on that market to choose what is the best innovation in this country, to choose who are the mission-driven entrepreneurs who should be building those companies, and to choose who are the funders of those companies. We can't allow Americans to have that luxury of managing that part of our economy. And if we fail to do that, then we do a great disservice to patients.
It's true. There's nothing like a good crisis, right, to turn it around. So many scientists I know went to the States because they could not get the traction here.
But so many scientists also came back.
That's right. So your time,
This is one of them.
yeah, so Suman was in Boston and made the decision in time to return here before all of this. So.
Yeah.
But do you get colleagues from the States calling you?
I have an incredible network of folks that we collaborate with. But guess what? We're I think you need to have that network. I don't think we're living in any sort of false illusion that we cannot have capital coming in from the US because it's a huge market. But I think what we're trying to say is let's try and be more Canadian in terms of the companies we build, while also bringing our US colleagues in, as opposed to our US colleagues coming and taking what we want to be building here.
Bring them in on our terms.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think, since this is the first of its kind, that other groups may follow this template?
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's my answer. Look, this is a way to bring all kinds of capital that's sitting idle on balance sheets on mission. And that's an important thing, right? I think we should all be thinking about how we find unique and collaborative ways to do more for the patients who your institutions are trying to fund and deliver cures for. And so be creative, be bold, do something different. Don't do the same thing you were doing yesterday. And this is one step in that way, in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, break down silos, build collaboration, and we'll go farther.
Yep. Last question for you.
Yes.
How will you know this has worked?
We'll know that it works when we see new therapeutics being approved, new biotech, new med tech. We see patient impact stories. The success is entirely on how has it impacted patients, both short and long term.
Timeline.
10 years.
10 years?
10 years. We're in the 10-year business.
10 years. That's the life cycle of what goes on.
Yeah. We'll start to see benefits in 6, but it's a 10-year process.
And how long it takes to develop drugs and bring them to market.
So same question for you. How will you know from your end of the boat here that it's working?
For me, it's about making the collaboration work. When the innovators understand the value of this kind of a relationship, when the scientists understand how translation works and are thinking about that as the next step of leveraging what they've done in their lab, when they think about that in a linear way and they have the connectivity to feel comfortable having those conversations with people like us and not thinking, it's an adversarial relationship, but it's a totally collaborative relationship, and that we all share the same vision for winning. There's lots of that going on today. I think we can have lots more of that going on over the next decade. And I think that's winning for us.
And for me, it's when 5 years from today, there's going to be another Canadian Club event, and people are referencing the Cancer Breakthrough Fund as a leading example for doing something different and new and bold.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right answer, by the way.
I was telling the other panelists that I actually made my own elbows up T-shirt, which my husband will wear because I made it for him. But what's the win for Canada out of this? Is there a national win too?
Well, as we see more Canadian companies scale, and Peter referenced those top 10, more Canadian companies in that top 10 is absolutely a win. If we see the culture of entrepreneurism and startup advance in Canada, that's a win.
Yeah. I do have another question from the audience, and I don't know if you want to tackle it because we're near the end of time, but they were looking for high-level information on this fund, the size, the lock-in period, the expected return, minimum investment.
Whoever asked
Ideal.
that question, email Michael or myself.
Yeah,
We'll give you the details.
that's thank you for whoever asked that. You get an A+ on that, and you can appear on BNN.
Yeah.
Those are the meetings we want to have.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we've covered a lot of topics, and I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming back to Canada. Okay.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, and thank you all for listening. The panelists will be here to answer any questions afterwards, but I thank you all for being here and listening with your ears and your heart. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Avis.
On behalf of the Canadian, Suman, have a seat. On behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, I just want to thank all of you, Michael, Suman, Peter, and of course Avis for your wonderful moderation. Really interesting discussion, incredibly innovative idea. And I understand it's kind of been done elsewhere, but I think this is a uniquely Canadian collaboration. I sort of feel like I want to wrap myself in the flag. So we really appreciate you choosing our podium to share this this fund with us. We will all look forward to the progress, indeed maybe even being part of the fund. So thank you for bringing this forward, and obviously we wish you all the best and great success. And for all of us who have been touched by cancer in the room, or may be touched by cancer in the room, I suspect this is going to be very important for all of us going forward. So thank you. Just before we close today, I would like to mention some of our events, and we certainly hope you can join us on, in keeping with the Canada theme, not surprisingly, on April 23rd, we are going to have a discussion on Canada's Arctic sovereignty with a distinguished panel of speakers, very important right now. On April 30th, we are hosting an evening event to talk about how Toronto gets its mojo back with our chief city planner. And for those who ride the subway or drive cars in this city, you may be interested in joining that. Please visit our website, canadianclub.org, for more information on these and other upcoming events. Finally, and as always, I would like to thank our AV supplier, VBC Live, for facilitating today's event. Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. We hope you have a great rest of your day.